Hey everybody, welcome back to the Postpartum Wellness Show. I'm Dr. Crystal Lau, your host and postpartum wellness consultant. Today I'm going to talk about the 3 places that you can get your confinement herbs while living in a Western country. But first up, I'm going to talk a little bit about what the confinement practice is for those of you who haven't quite heard about it or are not as familiar with it. And then we're going to dive into the 3 places where you can get your confinement herbs from. So what is the confinement practice? Well, firstly, confinement in the sense does not mean jail or imprisonment. What it means is mom and baby is confined to the home for the period of her rest and recovery after giving birth. In my show and in my book Postpartum 30, I use the word confinement to describe the practice of Zuo Yue Zi, or sitting the month, which is a traditional and cultural Chinese postpartum recovery practice that my ancestors have done for centuries. And this practice is based on the principles of traditional Chinese medicine. The reason I use the word confinement is because as a 3rd-generation Malaysian of Chinese heritage, I grew up with English as my first language. And all the women before me have taught me that this postpartum practice of recovery after childbirth is known as confinement. We barely use the word 坐月子 because the women in my family, well, my mom and aunts, English is also their primary language. Now, that being said, for those of us who have migrated to the West, a lot of this modern-day immigrants, or you're an expat from Asia to the West, and you're building a family while living overseas, or if you are a 2nd+ generation Asian who has been born and bred in the West, and you want to follow this cultural postpartum practice, here are 3 ways that you can find places to get your confinement herbs so that you have your stash as you go through the confinement month. But first, let's talk about why it isn't always easy to find confinement herbs when you're in a Western country. Well, firstly, there's concerns about the import of a lot of these herbal items from places outside of that particular Western country, whether you're in Australia, the UK, parts of Europe, or in America. And that is an understandable concern because you don't really know where the roots and barks came from, and you want to make sure that they're of the best quality and free of pesticides and any other toxins that could potentially harm your health. And number 2, for areas that do have herbal dispensaries to dispense traditional Chinese medicine or other type of herbal preparations, those places are also running a business. So they want to make sure they open their dispensaries and clinics in places where they can get the volume of patients and clients so that their investment pays off as well. Another reason a lot of these businesses target cities is because there's a large population of expats and immigrants who are very likely seeking these herbal remedies that they're familiar with. This is why the cities are your best bet for finding herbal dispensaries and traditional Chinese medicine clinics to tend to your confinement herbal needs. That being said, if you're living in a regional, rural, or suburban area, before you head out to look for these places, search for the words traditional Chinese medicine clinics, doctors, practitioners, or herbalists in the cities closest to you so that you can plan your trip and not go too far out of your way. The first place where you can go to find your confinement herbs when you're living in the West, traditional Chinese medicine doctor clinics. Those clinics are usually attached to a herbal dispensary. Why? Just like you've got clinics attached to pharmacies, when you go and see a traditional Chinese medicine doctor, they'll assess your health, talk to you about your concerns and needs, and then they'll give you a specific prescription for your confinement recovery. After that, you can choose to have your herbs packaged as raw herbs that you can brew yourself. And nowadays with modern tech, a lot of these traditional Chinese medicine TCM clinics and herbal dispensaries, they can prepare your confinement herbs into tiny little sachets of granules. So all you do is just empty those granules into your mug and brew your tea for the day, which is very easy to do and very helpful with getting you to the finish line of having your daily herbal drink every day for 30 days. If you're not able to go to these traditional Chinese medicine doctors, but you do find one close enough to you, give them a call. Some of them will do phone consults and also do some telehealth consults, because why not? Our modern healthcare does telemedicine nowadays, so it's only natural that the traditional Chinese medicine doctors do the same for their patients. For my first confinement experience, I was living in Alabama at the time, and there were no traditional Chinese medicine clinics close by. However, I needed to renew my Malaysian passport, and the only place I could do that was in New York. So I made a trip there, 7 months pregnant. At the same time, I went to see a traditional Chinese medicine doctor there, got my prescription, and I made space in my luggage to bring back 30 days worth of herbs. I got 15 days of herbs raw in their packages, which was easy, and the herbalist at the clinic taught my husband how to brew those herbs. They gave us written instructions as well, so it was really easy for us to use those herbs, which we were told just to stick them in the fridge and leave them be until we're ready to use them. And for the other 15 days, I got sachets where all we had to do was just empty those granules into a mug, and that was my confinement herbal drink for the day. So I was all set for my confinement herbal remedies despite living in rural Alabama at the time. Now, the second place where you can find your confinement herbs while living in the Western country is to go to local pharmacies where they have in-house herbalists, or even better, TCM pharmacists that are attached to that local pharmacy. For example, Germany. There are a few local pharmacies here that have traditional Chinese medicine pharmacists, or at least a herbalist, attached in-house. And the best thing about this setup is that you can self-prescribe herbs, and then these herbalists will then dispense the herbs for you, and they're able to give you general advice. In my experience, I had my second baby while my husband and the rest of us are stationed here in Germany. And I needed to find somebody to give me my confinement herbs while we're out here. Luckily, I managed to find a traditional Chinese medicine pharmacist located in Munich at a small village in the local pharmacy there. And she, based on the prescription that the traditional Chinese medicine doctor gave me for my previous confinement, she was able to dispense for me the exact confinement herbal preparation that I needed. Best part, she did it all in a big bottle of granules. So I just had to spoon out the scoops into a mug, throw some hot water in there, and I had my confinement herbal drink for the day. The great thing about this method is the herbalist is able to dispense a generic confinement herbal preparation for you, provided that you do not have health conditions that require a traditional Chinese medicine doctor to assess you and then give you special prescriptions. However, if this is the first time that you've heard of confinement or the first time that you're trying it out and you're not as familiar with Chinese herbs, then I do recommend that you see a traditional Chinese medicine doctor first and get their opinion so that you know that the prescription you got is safe and specific for yourself. Now, the third place where you can get your confinement herbs while living in the West is to approach businesses and services that offer confinement herb packages. What a lot of them do is they offer, again, a generic confinement herbal preparation, but everything's packaged for you for the 28 to 30 days, depending on what you choose and depending on what the businesses offer. This is, again, a great option if you cannot find a specific herbalist or traditional Chinese medicine doctors in your area, but you're able to get hold of these businesses and have them deliver this package to your home. Once again, if you're not as familiar with Chinese herb or you want a bit more reassurance before consuming the herbs, then yes, consult a traditional Chinese medicine doctor in your area or through phone or telehealth consults before going ahead and ordering from these businesses. One of the good things about seeing a traditional Chinese medicine doctor first to get a prescription is you could potentially reuse this prescription for your next confinement practice, especially if you don't have access to TCM doctors in your area, which is what happened to me. And there you go. Those are the 3 places where you can get your confinement herbs while you're living in the West. First, directly through a traditional Chinese medicine doctor, their clinic and their herbal dispensary. Number 2, through a local pharmacy that has an attached herbalist or a traditional Chinese medicine pharmacist. And number 3, through businesses and services that offer confinement herb packaging or confinement food services. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please leave me a review so that I know what you liked, what you didn't like, and that'll help me improve as I develop the show. Until then, I'll see you in the next episode.